Do you need title insurance or title examinations?
Settlement services, reverse and construction mortgages,
Residential and commercial purchases?
foreclosures and short sales, or even refinances.
Cornerstone Title and Settlement provides all these to all 21 counties in New Jersey.
The title company has 5 stars on Google and have been providing service since 2002.
so the next time you need an experienced, licensed title insurance agency providing title insurance searches, policies, settlement services, and closings,
There is only one person to call for all your purchase and refinance needs.
Cornerstone Title and Settlement.
Visit their website at www.cornerstonetitlenj.com.
That's www.cornerstonetitlenj.com.
I can't wait to buy my home and use this great company.
Katie, you're only in high school.
Well, if they've been around for 18 years, I'm sure they are there another 18 when I'm ready.
That's a good point, Katie.
Hi, everyone.
Want to breathe clean and fresh air?
Well, look no further.
Introducing Safe Air Systems.
Safe Air Systems installs units in newer and older homes and so much more.
So if you are selling your house or concerned about your radon levels, contact Safe Air Systems at 908-246-8191.
Or visit their website at www.njradonmitigation.com.
That's www.njradonmitigation.com.
Find them in Flemington, New Jersey. Their address is 12 Minneapolis Road, Unit 109B.
They are open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And remember, Safe Air Systems provides a free test kit for your convenience.
Safe Air Systems, radon mitigation near you.
Booyah!
Yeah.
The Kittitany Players are truly a group like no other. We are a group that cries together, laughs together, but most importantly, eats together. Each and every production we put on is different from the last, which helps us to learn and expand our horizons to all the things we can accomplish with such a dynamic group of people. While we work hard, we also find fun in the work. This is the key to such a successful and thriving program like ours. Not only does it give each member a home and a goal to work towards, but it gives every individual a unique and memorable experience.
There are many traditions that the players have carried on through the generations, including eating meals together and having a blackout the day before each opening show. One fairly new tradition that we're almost unable to continue is our fall play trip. Our first trip was to Salem during the 2018 production The Crucible. Last year, we spent a day in New York City for the 2019 production 6 Characters in Search of an Author. This year, many limitations were placed upon us due to the pandemic. However, we overcame these limitations by taking a local trip to the Walpack Historical Center to film this year's production. It was a perfect bonding experience for the cast and crew, and a fantastic opportunity for us to stay safe and get out of the house.
This year was monumental for our program and for theater groups in our area. While other groups chose to cancel their fall productions, the Kittitany Players simply said, "The show must go on." We knew producing our own movie would be a challenge because none of us have ever been in or created a movie, and creating a movie is no easy job, especially during a global pandemic. This brought challenges of social distancing and sanitizing our equipment, while trying not to compromise the quality of our production. Despite the odds being stacked against us, we chose to carry on and defeat those odds. Our willingness to be flexible and professional allowed us to create a production we can all be proud of. So without further ado, we present the Kittatinny Players' 100th production, Tales of the Tomb, the movie.
He fumbled at the passkey. It seemed sludgy, unwilling to turn in the lock. He attacked the passkey. The tumbler suddenly fell and he stepped back against the corridor's floor wall, breath of relief escaping him. He closed his eyes and all of the phrases started to parade through his mind. Cracking up, not playing with a full deck. Lost your marbles, guy just went Looney Tunes. He went up and over the side, went bananas, lost his football crackers, nuts off a sea bag. All meaning the same thing. Losing your mind. Bill, he whimpered, hardly aware that he had been reduced to this. Oh no, God, please no. But below, the tumble of his beating heart, below the trip hammer of his chaotic thoughts, he could hear the doorknob being turned to and fro, as if something tried helplessly to get out. Something wanted to meet him. Something wanted to be introduced to his family. As the storm shrieked around them and the white daylight turned into dark night. If he saw that doorknob moving, he would go mad. So for a while, he just kept his eyes shut. And for an unknowable time, there was stillness. He opened his eyes, half convinced that she would be standing right before him as the hall was empty.
"Stop it!" Judd screamed. He sprang the tiny swaying figure in its dirty burial suit, and that was when the cat arrowed out of the darkness under the butcher block where it had been crouched. It was hissing, its ears laid back along the bullet of its skull, and it tripped Judd up, just as neat as you please. The cleaver flew out of his hand. It skidded across the hummed and faded linoleum, blade and handle swiftly changing places as it whirled. It struck the baseboard with a thin clang and slid under the refrigerator. Judd had realized that he had been fooled again, and the only consultation was that it was for the final time. The cat was on his legs, mouth open, eyes blazing, hissing like a tea kettle. And then Gage was on him, grinning, a black, happy grin, eyes moon-shaped, rimmed with red. And his right hand came out from behind his back, and Judd saw what he had been holding when he came in was a scalpel from Lewis's black bag. "Oh my dear Jesus," Judd managed to put his hand right up to block the blow. And here was an optical illusion. Surely his mind had snapped because it appeared that the scalpel was on both sides of his palm at the same time. Then something warm began to drizzle down his face, and he understood. "I'm gonna mess with you, old man," the Gage thing chortled, blowing its poisoned breath in his face. "I'm going to squeal you. I'm gonna torture you all. I want..." Judd flailed and got a hold of Gage's wrist, skin peeled off like parchment paper in his hand. Then the scalpel was yanked out of his hand, leaving a vertical mouth. All I want! The scalpel came down again, and again, and again.
Now here he was, chasing his boat down the left side of Witcham Street. He was running fast, but the water was running faster, and his boat was pulling ahead. He heard a deepening roar, and saw that 50 yards farther down the hill, the water in the gutter was cascading into the storm drain that was still open. It was a long, dark, symmetrical cut into the curbing, and as George watched, a stripped branch, its bark dark and glistening as sealskin, shot into the storm drain's maw. It hung up there for a moment, and then slipped down inside. That was where his boat was headed. Oh, pooh and shinola! He put on speed, and for a moment he thought he would catch his boat. Then one of his feet slipped, and he went sprawling, skinning one knee, and crying out in pain. Oh, pooh and shinola! From his new pavement-level perspective, he watched his boat swing around twice, momentarily caught in another whirlpool, and then disappear. He slammed his fist onto the pavement. That hurt too, and he began to cry a little. What a stupid way to lose a boat. He got up and walked over to the storm drain. He dropped to his knee and peered in. The water made a dark, hollow sound, as if it fell into the darkness. It was a spooky sound. Huh? The sound was jerked out of him as if on a string, and he recoiled. There were yellow eyes in there, those sort of eyes he would always imagine in the basement, but he'd never actually seen. It's an animal, he thought incoherently. That's all it is, some animal. Maybe a house cat that got stuck in there. He was ready to run. He would run in a second or two, when his mental switchboard had dealt with the shock of those two shiny eyes had given him. He felt the rough surface of the macadam under his fingers and the thin sheet of cold water floating around them. He saw himself getting up and backing away, and that was when a voice, a perfectly reasonable and rather pleasant voice, spoke to him from inside the storm drain. Hi, Georgie. Want your boat, Georgie? I sure do. I sure do. That's good. That's very good. And how about a balloon? Well, sure. But I'm not supposed to take stuff from strangers. My dad said so. Very wise of your dad. Very wise indeed. Therefore, I will introduce myself. I, Georgie, am Mr. Bob Gray, also known as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Pennywise, meet George Denbrough. George, meet Pennywise. And now we know each other. I'm not a stranger to you, and you're not a stranger to me. Correct? I guess so. But how did you get down there? The storm just blew me away. It blew the whole circus away. Can you smell the circus, Georgie? You bet I can smell it. Want your boat, Georgie? I only repeat myself because you really do not seem that eager. Well, yeah, sure. And a balloon? I've got red and green and yellow and blue. Do they float? Float? Oh, yes, indeed they do. They float, and there's cotton candy. Dave Gardner was the first to get there, and although he arrived only 45 seconds after the first scream, George Denbrough was already dead. Gardner grabbed him by the back of the slicker, pulled him into the street, and began to scream himself as George's body turned over in his hands. The left side of George's slicker was now bright red. Blood flowed into the storm drain from the tattered hole where the left arm had been. A knob of bone, horribly bright, peeked through the torn cloth. The boy's eyes looked up into the white sky, and as Dave staggered away toward the others already running pell-mell down the street, they began to fill up with rain.
Where am I?
Well, you're in a writer's block, so we're all here to help you.
Yes, but how are you here?
It's best not to ask and just you're here.
Yeah, that's not to question the nature of our presence.
Is that Edgar Allan Poe?
In the flesh, and I brought a few friends with me as well. Help you out.
And that's H.P. Lovecraft and Lord Dunsany and Shirley Jackson. How did you get here?
Again, best not to ask questions on our nature of our presence.
Are you okay if I ask a couple of questions on writing?
Of course, well, I mean, that's what we're here for.
I've actually been working on this book, and it really does pertain to some real-life locations and scenarios that I've been involved in. I was wondering, Poe, have you ever experienced anything similar yourself?
In fact, I have. In my writing of Telltale Heart, it was actually inspired by a real-life murder of Joseph White in Salem, Massachusetts. And this murder was obviously well known throughout because, well, I mean, I heard about it. And so, this murder inspired me to write Telltale Heart. And in Telltale Heart, I wrote of a younger lad, and he's close, and he's friends with this older gentleman. But there's something about the older gentleman that really makes him snap. Something that he can't stand anymore. And so throughout the piece, he constantly is trying.
True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture. A pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him.
And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it. Oh, so gently. And then when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed so that no light shone out. And then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a man been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well into the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it so much that a single thin ray fell upon that vultured eye.
And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph.
To think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even a dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled.
Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened through the fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on, steadily, steadily.
I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in his bed, crying out,
"Who's there?"
I had kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the walls. Presently I heard a slight groan.
Ooh!
And I knew it was the groan of mortal terror.
It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself,
"It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor. It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp."
Yes, he has been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room.
When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a little, a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like the thread out of a spider, shot from out the crevice and fell upon that vultured eye. He was open, wide, wide open.
And I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person. I had directed the ray as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And now, I have not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now, I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too.
It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage.
But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased.
It grew quicker and louder every instant.
The old man's terror must have been extreme.
It grew louder, I say, louder every moment.
Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous. So I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. Louder, I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come.
With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once.
Ah!
And once only. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But, for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the walls. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more.
If you still think me mad, you will think no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned and I worked hastily, but in silence.
First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, and then the arms, and then the legs. I took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and disposed it all between the scantlings. I replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong.
There was nothing to wash out. No stain of any kind, no blood spot whatsoever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught it all! Ha ha!
When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight, as the bell sounded the hour. There came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputized to search the premises. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek I said was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search, and search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure and undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room, and desired them to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon that very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But they still sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gave definitiveness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my own ears. No doubt I grew very pale, and I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased. And what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such as a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the sound steadily increased. I arose and argued with trifles, in a high key with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited by fury of the observation of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore! I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting, and it grated upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God! No, they heard, they suspected, they knew! They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was more better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this diversion. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark! Louder, louder, louder!
Villains! Disassemble no more! I admit the deed! Tear up the planks! Here! Here! It is the beating of his hideous heart!
That's actually really interesting.
Yes, I didn't know that. Did you personally know Mr. White? Like, have you been to his lab before?
No, I have not been to Mr. White's lab. Thank you. JP.
Jeez,
Oh, yeah, that was really good.
you really get your own comedy special there, bud.
Yeah, you should. The writing wasn't for you. You need to do stand-up. Stand-up was your calling.
I was actually wondering, this sort of rule of thumb of locations and scenarios, does this ever apply to another one of your works, perhaps as The Raven?
Actually, yes, the Raven did have to do with the scenario. The scenario, unfortunately, is a little sad. What inspired me to do The Raven was actually the passing of my early wife, and her passing sent me into a path of depression and sadness, and in that comes feeling, and in feeling comes inspiration. And so I put it down on paper, I put what I was feeling, and I put my whole situation down on paper. And it shows of a crow, and this crow is the resemblance of the passing of
Really? The Raven, it shows a
No.
crow.
No, it was the Raven. That's right. My bad. I've been dead for so long. I kind of need to come back.
Mushy brain.
Yes, mushy brain. But
Wait, did this Raven actually come to your house and like?
no, the Raven didn't actually. No, the Raven didn't actually come to my house and whisper Lenore. Speaking of the Raven, when the Raven says Lenore, that's actually in reference to my wife. And when the Raven says nevermore, that too is basically telling me I need to get over her. There's nothing I can do now. She's passed on. And so through the poem, it speaks of this man in his chambers. And in his chambers, he hears a knocking at the door.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone was gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, To still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into the darkness, peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo back murmured the word. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then where thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more."
Open here I flung the shutter, one with many a flirt and flutter, and there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more.
Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Thou, thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven,
Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answers little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore.
But the raven, sitting lonely on that placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said,
Startled at the stillness broken by replies so aptly spoken,
"Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never, never more."
But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly gaunt and ominous bird of yore, meant in croaking, "Nevermore." This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er. With the lamplight gloated o'er, she shall press, nevermore.
Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he has sent thee. Respite, and then pent from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind, and pent and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempted or sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest, and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form off my door. Quoth the raven.
Now I find these short stories all really well and good, but I feel like Lord Dunsany really perfected the craft of a compendium of short stories. And I was wondering, Lord Dunsany, would you care to elaborate on that at all?
Well, I really just like the format. It's just, it's similar to like a continental breakfast. You can grab whatever you want in any order you want, and just, scarf down, and I just, there's something really nice about that.
Yeah, and you have enough money to buy all that, don't you?
I mean, I probably have enough money to buy you, too, and that comedy special that you're going to get.
That's right, but
Yes.
I envy you, Dunsany.
You should.
I mean, I sold my piece, The Raven, for $9. $9. I was that desperate for
Only now?
$9. Look at it now. It's one of the most.
That's
I can get any
what,
money.
like a quarter of a shoe that you bought?
No, it would have bought like 3 pairs of shoe back then.
Sure.
I feel like another one of your stranger works would be lobster salad, and would you want to talk a little bit on that?
I mean, what's there to talk about? You take some lobster and you cut it up, mix it with some mayo and some lemon.
Why would you name a story lobster salad when it has nothing to do with lobster or salad or lobster salad? I mean,
well, because I wanted to.
Wait, don't say lobster, guys. I just remembered. JP doesn't like it. He gets scared.
Right. He's scared of fish. Don't upset him.
Okay. Well, I just like LOBSTER.
Yeah, that's good. He can tell.
I'm not scared of lobster. I hate it. How about maybe like you're stuck in reclusion and have that fed to you every day of your life? Then you'll hate seafood.
Okay.
All I'm hearing is, my mommy made me eat lobster every day.
No, I don't have a problem with seafood at all. I mean, I'm actually on a seafood diet now. Any food I see, I eat.
Good one.
Thanks.
Another question I'd like to ask Lord Dunsany is, why the number 51?
Why not the number 51?
Seems like an odd number to end it on.
You seem like an odd number to end it on. Maybe I just like the number 51.
I think he just took 50 and then, was like, oh, I should throw some LOBSTER. And then
add a little LOBSTER in his continental breakfast there. That's an interesting thing to have for breakfast, though. I will have to say that.
The mist set into the mist. Let us go up into the downs, and the mist came up weeping.
and the mist went into the high places and the hollows, and clumps of trees in the distance stood ghostly in the haze. But I went to a prophet, one who loved the downs, and I said to him, "Why does the mist come up weeping into the downs when it goes into the high places and the hollows?" And he answered, "The mist is a company of a multitude of souls who never saw the downs, and now are dead. Therefore they come up weeping into the downs, who are dead and never saw them."
I saw a workman fall with this scaffolding right from the summit of some vast hotel, and as he came down, I saw him holding a knife, trying to carve his name on the scaffolding. He had time to try and do this, for he must have had nearly 300 feet to fall, and as he came down, I could think of nothing but the man's folly in doing such a futile thing. For not only would the man be unrecognizably dead in 3 seconds, but the very pole on which he tried to scratch whatever of his name he had time for was sure to be burnt in a few weeks for firewood. Then I went home, for I had work to do, and all that evening I thought of the man's folly, till the thought hindered me from serious work. And late that night, while I was still at work, the ghost of the workman floated through my wall and stood before me, laughing. It made no sound until I spoke to it, but I could see the gray, diaphanous form standing before me, shuddering with laughter. I spoke at last and asked what it was laughing at, and the ghost spoke. It said, "Why, I'm laughing at you, sitting and working there." "And why," I asked, "do you laugh at serious work?" "Why, you're bloomin'. Life will go by like a wind," the ghost said, "and your old silly civilization will be tidied up in a few centuries." And, laughing still, the ghost started laughing again, and floated back through my wall and into the eternity from which he had come.
Quran leaned forward and rode. All things were one with his weariness. It wasn't with him a matter of years or of centuries, but of wide floods of time, and a heaviness and pain in his arms that had become for him part of the scheme that the gods had made and was of a piece with eternity. If the gods had ever sent him a contrary wind, it would have divided all time in his memory into 2 equal slabs. So gray were all things always where he was, that if any radiance lingered a moment among the dead, on the face of a queen perhaps as Cleopatra, his eyes could not have perceived it. It was strange that the dead nowadays were coming in such numbers. They were coming in thousands when they used to come in 50s. It was neither Quran's duty nor his want to ponder why these things may be. Quran leaned forward and rode. Then, no one came down for a while. It wasn't usual for the gods to send no one down to such a space, but the gods knew best. Then, one man came alone, and the little shade sat shivering on the lonely bench as the great boat pushed off. Only one passenger. The gods knew best, and great and weary Quran rode on beside the little silent shivering ghost. And the sound of the river was like the sigh that grief in the beginning had sighed among her sisters, and that could not die, like the echoes of human sorrow falling upon earthly hills, and was as old as time and the pain in Quran's arms. Then the boat from the slow gray river loomed up to the coast of Dis, and the little shade, still shivering, stepped ashore, and Quran turned wearily to go back to the world. Then the shade spoke, that had once been a man. "I am the last," he said. No one had ever made Quran smile before. No one had ever made him weep.
I was climbing round the perilous outside of the palace of Colconombro, so far below me that in the tranquil twilight and clear air of those lands I could barely see them lay the craggy tops of the mountains. It was along no battlement or terrace edge that I was climbing, but on the sheer face of the wall itself, getting what footholds I could where the boulders joined. Had my feet been bare, I was done, but though I was in my nightshirt, I had on stout leather boots, and their edges somehow held in those narrow cracks. My fingers and wrists were aching. Had it been possible to stop for a moment, I may have been lured to give a second look at the fearful peaks of the mountains down there in the twilight. And this must have been fatal. That the thing is all a dream is besides the point. We've all fallen in dreams before, but it is well known that if in one of those falls you ever hit the ground, you die. I had looked at those menacing mountaintops and knew well that such a fall as the one I feared would have such termination. Then I went on. It is strange what different sensations there can be in every boulder, each one gleaming with the same white light, and every one chosen to match the rest by minions of ancient kings, when your life depends on the edges of every one you come to. Those edges seem strangely different.
It was of no avail to overcome the terror of one, for the next would give you a hold in quite a different way, or hand you over to death in a different manner.
Some were too sharp to hold, and some too flush with the wall. Those whose hold was the best crumbled the soonest. Each rock had its different terror, and then there were those things that followed behind me. And at last, I came to a breach made long ago by an earthquake, lightning, or war. I should have had to go down 1,000 feet to get round it, and they would come up with me while I was doing that, for certain sable apes that I have not mentioned as yet, things that had tigerish teeth and were born and bred on that wall, had pursued me all the evening. In any case, I could have gone no further, nor did I know what the king would do along whose wall I was climbing. It was time to drop and be done with it, or stop and await those apes. And then it was that I remembered a pin, thrown carelessly down out of an evening tie in another world to the one where grew that glittering wall, and lying now, if no evil chance had removed it from the chest of drawers by my bed. The apes were very close and hurrying, for they knew my fingers were slipping, and the cruel peaks of those infernal mountains had been surer of me than the apes. I reached out with a desperate effort of will towards where the pin lay on the chest of drawers. I groped about. I found it. I ran it into my arm. Saved.
So I feel like a lot of Lord Insanity's works revolve around mythology. But I feel like H.P. Lovecraft, you take a lot of influence around religion. And I was wondering, would you care to explain a little bit more about the religious sort of points of view that you took in some of your writings?
Sure. Well, of course, how I talked before about my reclusiveness and being, like, very chastised by my mother and my aunts, it sort of led me to teach myself things, and I came up with some obsessions, and of course religion was one of them, because there was mainly the fact that so many people could devote their lives to something, and they might not even get anything from it.
When did you first develop these sort of obsessions?
Well, like I said in my conclusion, that was mainly when I came up with these. I had quite a few, including the likes of, like, besides religion, like cults, and the past was really one, and also like astronomy and space really interested me.
Astronomy?
Yeah, you know, what the moon, space.
Yeah, but what's up with astronomy? I mean, like you go outside, look up, and it's just black void with some sparkles everywhere. Oh, there's a spoon. There's a spoon there. That's
2 spoons.
That's right, 2 spoons. There's a big one.
One big one.
And then there's some guy walking a dog. What's that all about? A dog.
And some bears.
Well, does have a point. Like, how could you be obsessed with that? Like, I'm obsessed with witchcraft. There's a lot of stuff in that.
Like,
but
fake stuff.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. I mean, that's what I get from looking up.
Well, with that, it's just it is mainly that. You look up, and all you really see is a black void, and you realize how small and minuscule you are, and you can't figure out what else is out there.
Do you think this sort of vast horror, do you think that plays into your writing at all?
Yes, absolutely. Especially in my story of Call of Cthulhu. That one mainly deals with madness, and that mainly stems from my own mental health. But with the likes of Cthulhu, I wanted to create a creature that could show that when looked upon, only riddled people with vehement hatred and incomprehensible power. Because when you look at Cthulhu, you don't know what to do. You can't fathom what this thing is. And you can do nothing but slowly crumble, and your mind goes mad, and you're hopeless.
The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents.
We live on a placid island of ignorance, in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. As my granduncle's heir and executor, I was expected to go over his papers with some thoroughness. in which his entire set of files were sent to my quarters. There was one box which I found exceedingly puzzling. For what could be the meaning of the queer clay bas-relief and the disjointed jottings I found? Had my uncle become so credulous of the most superficial impostures? It seemed to be some sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster. I say my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature. What seemed to be the main document was headed Cthulhu Cult. The other papers were brief notes with references to passages in such mythological and anthropological sourcebooks. The first half told on March 1st, 1925. A man of neurotic and excited aspects had called upon Angle, bearing the singular clay bas-relief. He was a precocious youth from childhood, excited by strange stories and odd dreams.
The older matters formed the second half of his manuscript. Once Angle had seen the hellish outlines of the nameless monstrosity, heard the ammonious symbols which can only be rendered as Cthulhu, he pursued young Wilcox with demands for data. The earlier experience had come in 1908, when the American Archaeological Society held its annual meeting, in which Professor Angle was one of the first to be approached by several outsiders who offered questions for correct answering for a solution. The chief of these outsiders was a middle-aged person who had traveled all the way from New Orleans for information unobtainable from any local source. Their name was John LaGrasse, and they were an inspector of police. With them they bore the grotesque, repulsive, and ancient stone statue, with origins were a loss to determine. It must not be fancied that LaGrasse had the least interest in archaeology. Their wish for enlightenment was prompted by professional considerations. The statue had been captured some months before in the wooded swamps south of New Orleans during a raid on a supposed voodoo meeting. That the police could not but realize that they had stumbled on a dark cult, totally unknown to them. Absolutely nothing was to be discovered.
There had come to New Orleans police a frantic summons from the swamp and lagoon country to the south. The squatters there, mostly primitive but good-natured descendants of Lafitte's men, were in the grip of stark terror from an unknown thing which had stolen upon them in the night. It was voodoo, apparently, but voodoo of a more terrible sort than they had ever known, and some of their women and children had disappeared since the malevolent tom-tom had begun its incessant beating far within the black haunted woods where no dweller ventured. There were insane shouts and harrowing screams, soul-chilling chants and dancing devil flames, and, the frightened messenger added, the people could stand it no more. The region, now entered by police, was one of the traditionally evil repute. They said it had been there before the natives, and even before the wholesome beasts and birds of the woods. It was a nightmare itself, but it made men dream. And so they knew enough to keep away from the voodoo gathering, which was on the merest fringe of this abhorred area. Only poetry or madness could do justice to the noises heard by men as they plowed through the black morass towards the red glare and the muffled tom-toms. There are vocal qualities peculiar to men, peculiar to beasts, and it is terrible to hear them. Now and then, the less organized ululation would cease, and from what seemed a well-drilled chorus of hoarse voices would rise in a sing-song chant that hideous phrase or ritual. Then the men came suddenly in sight of the spectacle itself. 4 of them reeled, 1 fainted, and 2 were shaken into a frantic cry, which the mad cacophony of the orgy fortunately deadened. I dashed swamp water on the face of the fainting man, and all stood trembling and nearly hypnotized with horror. In a natural glade of the swamp stood a grassy island of perhaps an acre's extent. On this now leaped and twisted a more indescribable horde of human abnormality than any could paint. The hybrid spawn were bellowing and writhing around bonfire, to which stood the great statue, on top of which, incongruous with its diminutiveness. It was inside this circle that the ring of worshippers jumped and roared from the ring of fire. They worshipped the great old ones who lived ages before men, and who came to the young world from the sky. Those old ones were inside the earth and under the sea, but their dead bodies had told secrets to the first men, who formed a cult which never died. This was that cult, and the prisoners said it would always exist, hidden in distant wastes and dark places all over the world, until the great priest Cthulhu, from his dark, mighty city of R'lyeh under the waters, would rise. Someday he would call, and the secret cult would always be waiting to liberate him. Meanwhile, no more must be told of their secret. The secret that mankind was not alone among Earth, for shapes came out of the dark to visit the faithful few. No man had ever seen the old ones. The craven idol was this great Cthulhu, but none say whether or not the others were like him. No one could read the old writing now, but things were told by mouth. The chanted ritual was not the secret, but that was only whispered. Chantment only this. In this house at R'lyeh, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming.
Legrasse, deeply impressed and not a little bewildered, had inquired in vain concerning the historical affiliations of the cult. The authorities at Tulane University could shed no light upon either cults or image, and now the detective had come to the highest authorities in the country. In elder times, chosen men talked to the old ones in dreams. But something had happened. The great stone city of R'lyeh had sunk beneath the waves, but memory never died, and the high priest said that the city would rise again when the stars were right. Then came out of the earth the black spirits of beneath the planet. On March 23rd of that same year, the crew of the Emma landed on an unknown island, leaving 6 men dead. Johansen's voyage had begun, just as he told it to his vice admiralty.
The Emma had cleared Auckland on February 20th, and the ship was making good progress when held up by the Alert on March 22nd. Driven ahead by Curiosity and our captured yacht under my command, our men sight a great stone pillar sticking out of the sea and come upon a coastline of mingled mud, ooze, and weeds.
The nightmare corpse city of R'lyeh was built in measureless aeons behind history by the loathsome shapes seeped down from the dark stars. There lay great Cthulhu, hidden in green slimy vaults, and thoughts that spread fear through the dreams of the sensitive, and called imperiously to the faithful to come on a pilgrimage of liberation and restoration.
All this I did not suspect, but God knows what I soon saw enough. When I think of all that may be brooding down there, I almost wish to kill myself forthwith. The unbelievable size of the greenish stone blocks, the dizzying height of the carven monolith, the superfying identity of the colossal statues with the queer image found in the shrine of the Alert.
He spoke of the city, for instead of describing any definite structure, he dwells only on the broad impressions of the vast angles with stone surfaces, impetus, with horrible images and hieroglyphs. He had said that the geometry was abnormal, lacking in dimensions apart from ours.
We landed at a mud bank and clambered up over tight oozing blocks, what had been no moral staircase. The very sun of heaven distorted when viewed through the polarizing miasma welling out from the sea-soaked provision, and the twisted menace lurking leerily and through elusive angles of the carven rock. Something very frightful had come over all of us before anything more definite had been seen, for we would not have fled had we not feared the scorn of others, and it was only half-heartedly that we searched for some portable souvenir to bear away. We looked curiously at the immense carved door. We watched the queer recession of the monstrously carven portal. The aperture was black like darkness. The tenebrousness burst forth into the sky, flapping membrous wings.
Poor Johansen's writings almost gave out after he wrote of this. Of the 6 men who never reached the ship, 2 perished of pure fright. The thing, it cannot be described, such eldritch contradictions of all matter and cosmic order. God, what wonder that across the earth a great architect went mad. The thing, the green sticky spawn of the stars, had awakened to claim its own. The stars were right again, and after so many years, the great Cthulhu was loose again.
3 men were swept up by the flabby claws. God rest them, if there had been any rest in the universe. Only Bryden and I had reached the boat. Bryden had looked back and went mad, laughing shrilly as he kept on laughing at intervals till death found him. But I had not given out yet, and resolved on a desperate chance. Setting the engine for full speed, I reversed the wheel. The steam mounted higher and higher, where the scattered plasticity of the nameless sky spawn was nebulously recombining in its hateful, original form. while its distance widened every second as the alert gained impetus from its mounting steam.
That was all. Johansen did not try to navigate after the first bold flight, for the reaction had taken something out of his soul. And soon enough came their rescue and the long voyage back home. He would write of what he knew before death came to him. That was the document I read, and it will test my own sanity. But I do not think my life will be very long. As my uncle went, so shall I. I know too much, and the cult still lives.
Cthulhu still lives, again in that chasm of stone which has shielded him since the sun was young. His accursed city is sunken once more, but his ministers on the earth still bellow and slay around the idol-capped monoliths in lonely places. He must have been trapped by the sinking whilst within his black abyss. Who knows the end? What has risen may sink, and what has sunk may rise. Loathsomeness waits and dreams in the deep, and decay spreads over the tottering cities of men. A time will come.
I feel as if these religious experiences, they're very much a product of our time, and I feel like out of authors that were really much influenced by their time period, I feel as if Shirley Jackson would be at the top of that list, and I was wondering, would you care to elaborate on that?
Oh, of course. The time period definitely did help. I was very shut in, like Lovecraft was telling us about. My parents neglected me because my brother was the favorite. I was just Shirley. And they didn't even come to my wedding. So I needed to find my own company and my own things that could keep me sane, if that makes any sense. And so that led to my obsession with witchcraft, because the spirituality in it helped me cope.
Did you ever try to curse anyone?
Yeah, did it ever work? Did you like bippity boppity boo someone out of existence or something like that?
Well, not all witchcraft is just cursing.
You have a magic wand?
I mean, I have
Turn someone into
before.
frogs?
What?
Have you turned someone into frogs?
Sure, Dunsini. Yeah. That.
Then, like, can you turn one person into one frog, or is it like the whole like matter convergence? Like one person is like a bunch of frogs, like they all just like fall over.
But like more importantly, do you have a magic
your
wand?
Yankee tobacco?
The frog thing, no, but my Yankee thing didn't work. But
oh, gee, it didn't work. Oh gosh, I wonder why that didn't work. I can't fathom that.
Magic,
but
not working.
Was this curse ever directed at anything besides a Yankee game?
Wait, repeat?
Was this sort of magic ever directed at anything besides a Yankee game?
Well, you're not listening to the frogs, man. Come on.
Yeah, she turned people into frogs.
We just went over this.
Yes, only frogs.
Why would you turn someone into a frog?
Have you ever looked at someone and you were like, you know, you'd be way better if you weren't a human. If you were a frog.
Yeah, honestly, I'd rather Dunsini to be a frog right now. Anyway.
Honestly, same.
So, not everything that I did was cursing. I actually wrote a story named Charles. And that was actually to get back at parents that wrote negative reviews on my story called The Lottery.
Oh, surely you can't be serious.
Ha ha! Oh, you're so funny. But no. I wrote Charles to get back at said parents that wrote so many negative reviews about The Lottery.
What was Charles about?
Oh, okay. So, Charles,
The day my son Laurie started kindergarten, he renounced corduroy overalls with bibs and began wearing blue jeans with a belt. I watched him go off the first morning with the older girl next door, seeing clearly that an era of my life was ended. My sweet-voiced nursery school tot replaced by a long-trousered, swaggering character who forgot to stop at the corner and wave goodbye to me. He came home the same way, the front door slamming open, his cap on the floor, and the voice suddenly becoming raucous, shouting, "Isn't anybody here?" At lunch, he spoke insolently to his father, spilled his baby sister's milk, and remarked that his teacher said we were not to take the name of the Lord in vain. "How was school today?" I asked, elaborately casual. "All right," he said. "Did you learn anything?" his father asked. Laurie regarded his father coldly. "I didn't learn nothing," he said. "Anything," I said. "Didn't learn anything." "The teacher spanked a boy, though," Laurie said, addressing his bread and butter. "For being fresh," he added with his mouth full. What did he do?" I asked. "Who was it?" Laurie thought. It was Charles," he said. "He was fresh. The teacher spanked him and made him stand in the corner. He was awfully fresh." "What did he do?" I asked again. But Laurie slid off his chair, took a cookie, and left, while his father was still saying, "See here, young man."
The next day, Laurie remarked at lunch as soon as he sat down, "Well, Charles was bad again today." He grinned enormously and said, "Today Charles hit the teacher." "Good heavens," I said, mindful of the Lord's name. "I suppose he got spanked again?" "He sure did," Laurie said. "Look up," he said to his father. "What?" his father said, looking up. "Look down," Laurie said. "Look at my thumb. Gee, you're dumb." He began to laugh insanely. "Why did Charles hit the teacher?" I asked quickly. "Because she tried to make him color with red crayons," Laurie said. "Charles wanted to color with green crayons, so he hit the teacher, and she spanked him and said nobody played with Charles, but everybody did."
The third day, it was Wednesday of the first week, Charles bounced a seesaw on the head of a little girl and made her bleed, and the teacher made him stay inside all during recess. Thursday, Charles had to stand in a corner during story time because he kept pounding his feet on the floor. Friday, Charles was deprived of blackboard privileges because he threw chalk. On Saturday, I remarked to my husband, "Do you think kindergarten is too unsettling for Laurie? All this toughness and bad grammar, and this Charles boy sounds like such a bad influence." "It'll be all right," my husband said reassuringly. "Bound to be people like Charles in the world. Might as well meet them now rather than later." Monday night was the first parent-teachers meeting, and only the fact that my baby had a cold kept me from going. I wanted passionately to meet Charles's mother.
On Tuesday, Laurie remarked suddenly, "Our teacher had a friend come to see her in school today." "Charles's mother?" my husband and I asked simultaneously. "Nah," Laurie said scornfully. "It was a man who came and made us do exercises. We had to touch our toes. Look." He climbed down from his chair and squatted and touched his toes. "Like this," he said. He got solemnly back into his chair and said, picking up his fork, "Charles didn't even do exercises," Laurie said. "That's fine," I said heartily. "Didn't Charles want to do exercises?" "Nah," Laurie said. "Charles was so fresh to the teacher's friend, he wasn't let to do exercises." "Fresh again?" I said. "He kicked the teacher's friend," Laurie said. "The teacher's friend told Charles to touch his toes like I just did, and Charles kicked him." "What are they going to do about Charles, do you suppose?" Laurie's father asked him. Laurie shrugged elaborately. "Throw him out of school, I guess," he said.
Wednesday and Thursday were routine. Charles yelled during story hour and hit a boy in the stomach and made him cry. On Friday, Charles stayed after school again, and so did all the other children. With the third week of kindergarten, Charles was an institution in our family. The baby was being a Charles when she cried all afternoon. Laurie did a Charles when he filled his wagon full of mud and pulled it through the kitchen. Even my husband, when he caught his elbow in the telephone cord and pulled the telephone, ashtray, and a bowl of flowers off the table, said, after the first minute, "Looks like Charles." During the third and fourth weeks, it looked like a reformation in Charles. Laurie reported grimly at lunch on Thursday of the third week. "Charles was so good today, the teacher gave him an apple." What? I said, and my husband added warily, You mean Charles? Charles, Lori said. He gave the crayons around, and he helped pick up books afterward, and the teacher said he was her helper. What happened? I asked incredulously. He was her helper, that's all, Lori said, and shrugged. Can this be true about Charles? I asked my husband that night. Can something like this happen? Wait and see, my husband said cynically. When you've got a Charles to deal with, this may mean he's only plotting. He seemed to be wrong. For over a week, Charles was the teacher's helper. Each day he handed out things and picked up things. No one had to stay after school. The PTA's meeting's next week again, I told my husband one evening. I'm going to find Charles' mother there. Ask her what happened to Charles, my husband said. I'd like to know. I'd like to know myself, I said.
My husband came to the door with me that evening as I set out for the PTA meeting. Invite her over for a cup of tea after the meeting, he said. I want to get a good look at her. If only she's there, I said prayerfully. She'll be there, my husband said. I don't see how they would hold a PTA meeting without Charles's mother. At the meeting, I sat restlessly, scanning each comfortable matronly face, trying to determine which one hid the secret of Charles. None of them looked at me haggard enough. No one stood up in the meeting and apologized for the way her son had been acting. No one mentioned Charles. After the meeting, I identified and sought out Lori's kindergarten teacher. She had a plate with a cup of tea and a piece of chocolate cake. I had a plate with a cup of tea and a piece of marshmallow cake. We maneuvered to one another cautiously and smiled. I've been anxious to meet you, she said. I'm Lori's mother. We're all so interested in Lori, she said. Well, he certainly likes kindergarten, I said. He talks about it all the time. We had a little trouble adjusting the first week or so, she said primly, but now he's a fine little helper. With occasional lapses, of course. Lori usually adjusts very quickly, I said. I suppose this time it's Charles's influence. Charles? Yes, I said, laughing. You must have your hands full in that kindergarten with Charles.
Charles? We don't have any Charles in the kindergarten.
That's amazing. Why were these parents writing such negative reviews about the lottery?
They weren't too fond about the ending. It was,
Why the ending rocky?
What?
Was the ending a little rocky?
Dude, I think the ending rocks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was just about the ending, and speaking about my parents and how they neglected me, they also didn't like that story either. They thought that ending was very too out there, in their opinion.
Would you want to talk a little bit more on the lottery?
Yes, please do. I'm just dead to know.
Of course. So it starts out with a very happy and upbeat village, and they're all starting to go out into this field to commence this festival that they have.
Best one's right in my pocket.
Me too.
We ought to make an extra pile over there. Then we take care of the garden.
Sure. Yeah, then if any other kids try to swipe any, we'll be ready for them. Girls always gotta be hanging around.
I know it. They ruin everything.
Come on, let's go.
Children are always the first to gather.
Sure, but everybody be coming soon as they hear the bell.
Beautiful day for it.
Ah, yes, fine. You know, I don't care if this is our hometown, but we sure got the prettiest village green in all the state. Oh, how are you, Bill?
Fred, Forrest, good to see you. You both know Davy?
Well, I should hope so. How are you, Davy? This is his first year, ain't it?
That's right. Never seen a lottery before. Have you, Dave?
Gonna grow up and be a good farmer, just like your dad. That's the boy.
Can I go and play with the other kids?
You know, my son Chester wants to go off to some agriculture school, learn a bunch of book rubbish.
Oh,
Now, I told him he better stay home and learn of his father, same as I did of mine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, help pay the taxes.
That's right. You know, I told him a farmer don't need to develop his mind, so long as he builds his muscle.
A strong back. That's what you need when you take the farm in.
That's right. Well, where's the wife, Bill?
Oh, she'll be along.
All right.
Yeah.
How does the weather suit you, Myrtle?
Couldn't be better.
We always seem to get good weather for the 27th. Never knew it to fail.
Been right cold and wet for November.
Oh, that rain done us lots of harm. Too much rain.
Guess the lottery ought to change our luck.
Well, that's how the saying goes. Oh, look who it is. Howdy, Miss Vessa. Why, you ain't changed a particle.
Whoever said I had?
They told me you were getting real fleshy, but it ain't so.
Of course it ain't. Here, you had a wedding in the family.
Oh, yes. My sister Nina's girl got married to young Sam Gilead over by Rigby Township.
I suppose that means she'll be drawn over there from now on.
Oh, sure. She'll be drawn with his family now. Say, Hazel, it's been a month of Sundays since I've seen you. Don't you never come into town?
Not if I can help it. Ain't been further than my own chicken yard, at least not since Decoration Day, and that's a fact.
One thing about the lottery, it does bring everybody out, like it or not.
Yeah, well, Hazel's got Clyde to wait on, too. How's he making out?
Oh, he'll be fine, except he's terrible mad to have to stay home and miss the excitement today.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So, I made this apple pie, and it's like a new kind of recipe.
I wonder who's still working over in those fields over there.
I don't know. No, I was thinking I was going to make the switch from grass to hazel because I got that new tractor.
Costs about the same to harvest an acre, don't it?
Just about. Cattle don't seem to mind, though. And I thought I was going to get away from the risk of bad weather.
Now, don't you fret about the weather, Horace. Remember, lottery in November, more corn next September.
That's what they always told us. Ain't it, Frank?
You bet.
Oh, look. Jack Wilkins is coming.
There's the boy. How are you now?
So instead of the regular apples, I used Granny Smith's.
Oh.
So how did that taste?
It was a bit bitter, but still good.
You know, speaking of bitter, where's Tessie Hutchinson at? Do you see her?
No, I don't. But Bill's standing right there, though, and little Davy, too.
You know, I got a recipe I borrowed from her. The watermelon pickles she wanted fries with at the social. Those are so good.
I love those.
Oh, excuse me, ladies. Hi, Ms. Dunbar. How's Clyde doing?
Fine, thanks, Jack. Doctor's gonna take the cast off next week.
Oh, well, that's good. How's he gonna get the news today?
I promised to send Tommy running soon as the drawing's over.
Oh, that's nice. I'll see y'all later now.
Bye, Jack.
Such a nice boy, Jack Wilkins.
He's got his mother's look. Bless him.
So many of those young ones seem to drift away. This place is getting smaller every year.
I know it. Joe Summers said there's less than 200 names on the registration this year.
You don't mean it.
I
Isn't that
know.
awful?
It's crazy.
There's always so
Here's old man Warner, looking spry as ever.
How are we feeling, Mr. Warner?
Not too bad. Rheumatism comes and goes.
How does it feel to be the oldest citizen?
Well, you'll hear me complaining.
Sir, no, I do not.
And how many lotteries does this make?
Well, I'm 81 this November. She's my first at the age of 5. You figured it out.
Haven't missed a single one in all those years, haven't you, Mr. Warner?
Well, he hears pretty well too, don't he?
Oh, he's a marvel.
Oh, and I'll be coming back for a few more.
You tell him, old timer.
Do you hear that? He says he's good for a few more.
Well, he's seen 76 of them.
Imagine. You fellers ought to have been here back in the olden days. Not like now. Lottery used to mean something when I was a boy.
Hey, I see it, Bird. You keep that Hey, we're going, boys. See it, Bird.
Never you mind. You have to go, funny.
You come here to me.
Wait till I get you home.
Obey your mother. Mind what I say.
Yes, Uncle Horace.
Oh, here's Joe Summers coming now.
Oh, yeah. We all better line up by families. Wait for the bad news.
Davey, sit close to me. It's nothing to share.
Come on, Tony.
Wait for the water.
Since last year, I've been excited as
Oh,
Hey.
Thank you, Norbert. Little late today, folks.
Ah, you're fine, Joe.
Okay, Joe. Norbert, start stirring up the box. Better to use both hands. How are we today, folks?
We're doing good, Joe. How are you?
Almost ready, are we, Joe? Hope you haven't forgotten and left my name out.
No, Belva. You're down there. I've just been checking my list.
When you got a long ways to go yet, a terrible responsibility. Everybody says so. Poor Joe Summers. Up there doing in his duty and with that nagging sister, too.
Well, Belva, if everybody says so, there must be something to it.
I must say, I enjoy myself watching an important man at work. Up there spending all your time and energy in civic activities. How you love it.
You'd oblige me, Belva, by lowering your voice a little.
And why should I?
Might give a thought to the neighbors.
The neighbors? If everyone wasn't so scared of their neighbors, maybe we'd give up some of the heathen customs that don't make sense anymore. Half of the young folk growing up don't even have a notion of what a lottery stands for.
What's the use of talking to you?
I don't like this town nor anybody in it. But you're the worst of them, Joe Summers. You drove him away. Our own brother. You drove him away.
It was more your doing than mine. You're the one who brought him up to be a weakling and a coward. Brought him up on the street preaching against tradition.
Call that cowardly? It takes a brave man to say what he thinks when the whole hand is against him.
He left on his own accord. I didn't send him.
It takes real courage to fight prejudice on your own doorstep. You and the rest of them are the ones that are cowards.
Every day of my life, I have to listen to your craziness. If you want to go looking for him, go ahead. Take the morning train. I'll even start drawing alone in the lottery from now on. There, I can make a better offer than that, could I?
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay right here and wait. Sooner or later, your name might come up, and I wouldn't want to miss that day.
Oh. That's sure enough, Norbert. Think it's sure enough, ladies?
Oh, don't worry, Joe. We trust you. Joe knows what he's doing, all right.
Hear those women hollering.
So do I.
Would have never stood for that in the old days.
Seen some changes, ain't you, Mr. Warner?
Bad enough to see Joe Summers up there cracking jokes. No one shows respect for the ceremony. Just go through the motions nowadays.
Well, how's it different from when you were a boy?
Oh, it was some different. So everyone had to stand just like so. And before drawing, the head man spoke a piece real solemn. Had a whole regular recitation going.
Now, where in tarnation is my wife? Bill Hutchinson has lost his better half. Hazel!
What a surprise.
You seen her?
No, I ain't, Phil, and I've been looking too. Yeah, we have.
Guess she ain't gonna make it.
You know, late for the lottery. Can you beat that?
I don't know what's gotten into that woman.
You know, that black box has sure seen a lot of service.
Yes, sir. That box was here before I was born. Here before my father was, too.
Just imagine.
The story goes that this box is made of the original piece of the old one. It's first used. Huh, makes you think, don't it? Goes back way back to the times where they first settled down to make a village.
Seems like it's time we ought to get us a new one, don't you think?
No, boy, don't say that. Not even joking. Yeah, now, Jack, we don't want to upset tradition more than we have to. Sorry. So if the box stays intact, we ain't gonna change it. No, sir. I could recollect when they used to use wood chips instead of writing names on the paper. Yeah.
Well, what do you know? Wooden chips.
Exactly. I was real little. I remember.
Oh, I'm sure you do, Mr. Warner.
Now, folks, I'm just about ready to declare this lottery open.
All right.
But you know how I always got this last-minute fussing to do? Just want to make sure the list is accurate, with all the heads of families and members of each family.
You go right ahead, Mr. Summers. Joe never made a mistake yet. Where you been? Clean forgot what day it was. Thought Bill was out back stacking wood. Then I looked out the window and seen all the kids were gone. 27 coming running. Made it on time, all right. Joe was still checking his legs. Seems like there's no time at all between lotteries this long. Seems like we barely got through with the last one. Sure goes fast. Where's Bill at? Oh, I see. Excuse me, Hazel.
Oh, Bill, here's your wife. There's Tessie.
Oh, hi, Tessie.
Oh, there she is. She come to late dinner.
How's my good boy?
You got you, did you?
Thought we were gonna have to get on without you, Tessie.
Wouldn't have me leave my dishes in the sink, would you, Joe?
No, ma'am.
Now, Davy, you stay here while I talk with your mother. You come here. Whatever kept you?
Oh, I don't know, Bill. I just wasn't thinking, I guess.
Now that story's all right for the woman. I know better. You knew the lottery was today.
Well, it don't matter now, so long as I'm here.
And what about Davy? Why'd you try to hide him?
Hide him? I didn't hide him.
I found him in the stable loft. He said you told him to wait there.
Yes, but I was going to get him. I was going to bring him. Honest.
And what reason did you have to put him there?
Oh, Bill, he's such a little boy, and his birthday just last month. I hate to see the children taking part in grown-up productions before they've even put aside their toys.
I went through it when I was little.
I know, Bill. I guess I was born and brought up with it, same as yourself.
And how do you think you can get away with such a thing? You know Davy's name has to be in there along with ours, and you know how careful Joe Summers is. Why, we'd have been a laughingstock in front of everybody.
Yes, but I told you I intended to bring him, Bill. You've got to believe me.
Talking a lot of sentimental Tommy rot. I always give you more credit for more sense than some of these other females. What's come over you lately anyways?
Told you. Nothing.
Next thing you'll be saying is, we ought to give up lotteries altogether, like poor Joe Summers' sister.
Well, I've not come to that yet, but some places have given them up. Lots of little towns up to the north.
No good'll come of it either. Just you wait and see.
No, I don't say it will. I reckon the lottery serves its useful purpose. When a custom's been handed down from generation to generation, there must be good in it.
Then you shouldn't be so cuss busy finding both.
All right. Well, now, guess we better get started so as we can get back to work. Anybody make it?
Dunbar.
Oh, that's right. Clyde Dunbar, make it.
Yeah.
Clyde Dunbar. That's right. Broken his leg, hasn't he?
Yes, sir.
Who's drawing for him?
Me, I guess.
Wife draws for husband. You don't have a grown boy to do it for you, Hazel?
Tommy's not but 16 yet. Guess I gotta fill in for the old man this year.
Right. Jack Wilkins, you're drawing this year?
Yes, sir, for my mother and me.
Good fellow, Jack. Glad to see your mother's got a man to do it.
Guess that's everyone. Old man Warner make it?
Here.
Knew you would. All right. I'm going to read off the list. Heads of families come up and take a folded slip of paper. Keep it folded until everyone has gotten one. Adam. Hi, Steve. Alan. Hello, Mr. Allen. Appleby. Barrows. Burgess. Coswell. Collins.
know, I hear in the North Village, they're talking about giving up the lottery.
Believe that? Pack of crazy fools. Listen to them young folks. Nothing's good enough for them anymore. Next thing you know, they'll want to go back to living in caves. Nobody work anymore. Live like that way for a while.
That's right, Mr. Warner.
Next thing we'd be eating stewed chickweed and acorns. There's always been a lottery.
Graves, Hutchinson, Summers.
Oh, you're so funny, Joe. Where do they keep the black box in between times? It varies. Sometimes here, sometimes another. You know, I've heard it spent a whole winter in Mr. Graves' barn. Another year, Slide Martin put on the top shelf in his grocery and just let it sit there. Yep, I recall that time. That was a pretty good year.
Dunbar.
Go on, Hazel. That's you. There she goes.
Tatum. Townsend. Tuttle. Vincent.
But I wish they'd hurry. Get ready to run until then.
Warner. Howdy, Mr. Warner.
Got mine. 77 years, I've been part of this lottery. Yes, Mr. Warner.
Watson.
Hi, Joe.
Wilkin.
Don't be nervous, Jack.
Take your time, son.
Thank you, Mr. Summers.
All right, folks.
Is it us?
It's us.
Bill's got it.
Bill has it.
Ain't that a twist? Joe Summers. You didn't give him time enough to choose any paper he wanted.
come
I
on.
saw you. It wasn't fair.
It was.
Be a good sport, Tessie. Everybody had the same chance.
You hush up, Tessie. Well, that was done pretty fast, but we better hurry to get done in time. Bill, you're drawing for the Hutchinson family. Any other households?
There's Dawn and Eva. Make them take their chance.
Wives draw with their husband's family. You know that as well as anyone, Tessie.
It isn't fair.
Well, I guess there is just Dawn and the five of us. Dawn and Eva draw with their husband. That's only as it should be.
That's right.
Right. Jack, you got the blank tickets back?
Yes, sir.
All right, Hutchinson family. Couple of Davy.
Little Davy.
It's not the way it used to be. People just ain't the same way they used to.
Remember,
Poor child.
take one slip of paper. Keep it folded until everyone has gotten one. Davy? Nancy? Bill Jr.? Tessie? Come on. Bill? Thank you, Joe. Of course. Go ahead. It's Tessie. Show us her paper, Bill.
It's Tessie.
Yes, sir.
Oh.
All right, folks. Let's finish quickly.
All right, come on.
It isn't fair. It isn't right. It isn't fair. It isn't right.
Oh, you shut up.
Please.
We've got to do this. That's right.
No. No.
Come on. Come on, everyone.
Let's no.
Get her.
Let's get back to work.